You're listening to the Sea of Dragons podcast by XFL Endzone. Welcome to Episode 5, Dragon's Lair. I'm your host, Brandon Main. Week 2 of XFL 2020 is in the books, and we're fired up to have one of our very favorite XFL players on the show. But first, a few thoughts on Week 2. We had some significant surprises and some intriguing storylines develop in Week 2. The first one being the team meltdown of the New York Guardians. Now, I think many of us felt that New York had a big Eastern Road challenge in attempting to knock off the Defenders in DC, but the way in which they lost, well, it was simply ugly. McGloin responded poorly by commenting to a sideline reporter and basically nudging his coach and the entire team under the bus. And at 27-0, it was an impressive victory by DC. So the Defenders take a stronghold of first place at 2-0. And this game reflects just how close the Dragons were in Week 1 to pulling off the task of beating the Defenders. But a small handful of costly mistakes held them back. And this leads us to Saturday's second game. My day on Saturday started by waking up at 5:30 a.m., traveling from the Washington coast to hopping on a Bremerton ferry, and then I spent a few hours around the fantastic atmosphere outside of CenturyLink Field. The crowd was amazing, like a loud 30,000 fans at a Seahawks game. It didn't hold back. Unfortunately, though, Brandon Silver struggled mightily. He was 7 of 18 passing, and 91 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And he ended up with a 50.9 rating. But if you take away the 68-yard touchdown to Keenan Reynolds, we would have been left with far worse. 6 of 17, only 23 other yards passing, and 1 INT. So Week 3 becomes a crucial game for Silvers, and I think Coach Zorn gives him full support. But if his struggles continue, he may only have until halftime to prove himself. And we're pulling for him, because when Brandon plays his game, he's a baller. He's quick, precise, aggressive, and decisive. But as I watched him closely at the home opener, he was a little antsy, and as the game went on, he continued to miss reads and miss his targets, and his feet got real nervous all too often. And in the aftermath of watching the game and having some time to think about his performance, it reminded me of a young John Kitna. In fact, they have a very similar game, and I love John Kitna. He's a fierce competitor, but he had his struggles, especially as a young quarterback with the Seahawks. I think he needs to find his calm so he can focus and get into a rhythm as a quarterback, because we've all seen him do that, and we know he's fully capable. But I think this Week 3 game with the Dallas Renegades at home in Seattle, he has an opportunity to now put his game together. In the DC game, he had some big plays. Obviously, he had the huge play in the Tampa Bay game. So if he can work his whole game together and back where it's been in the past, and he settles himself behind this offensive line to conduct business and distribute the ball, he's just going to find nothing but success. And in the second half, we saw that happening much more than the first half. So let's push reset. We got Dragons once again at home, and I think we're going to have a heck of a matchup this Saturday. And that brings us to the third game this past weekend, as Dallas traveled to LA to take on the Wildcats. So you had Landry Jones and Josh Johnson both making their XFL debut, and there was a lot of excitement to this game with some big plays, but also some big turnovers. Landry Jones found his rhythm as the day went along, and he put together about 305 yards and a touchdown. But he also threw 2 interceptions, and it kept the Wildcats in the game. But in the fourth quarter, it was the Renegades' backfield, the run game, that carried the load, led by Curtis Artis-Payne, who had 99 yards, and the team had 150 yards in their rushing attack. In the fourth and final game, St. Louis and Jordan Ta'amu brought a fantastic fight to H-Town, and this was primetime caliber, action-packed XFL. In the showdown, Ta'amu threw for 284 yards with 3 touchdowns, but 2 costly INTs led to being outgunned by P.J. Walker's 170 yards passing and 3 touchdowns to Cam Phillips in a monster game between the duo. Both the Battlehawks and the Roughnecks look very strong in the early going, but the Roughnecks now sit atop the West as the only Western team that is undefeated through 2 weeks. The Roughnecks now sit atop the West as the only Western team that is undefeated through 2 weeks. And now, before we get to our special Seattle Dragons guest, I want to give a quick shout out to some local and fellow XFL podcasters and influencers that I was able to finally meet in person, and it was a real treat to meet these guys before the game. We had Dragons Weekly Podcast, Sound of the Dragon Podcast, and also the Beijing of Loom. We got to know these guys on Twitter, and it was really cool to come together and meet and then head off and watch the Dragons get their first victory. And now, it's time to enter the Dragon's Keep. Welcome to the Dragon's Keep. Today we are joined by a very special guest. He played his college football with the Kansas Jayhawks, where he recorded 225 tackles. He is also a veteran NFL linebacker with years of experience under his belt. Last spring, he was a core defensive leader of the Arizona Hotshots in the Alliance. And now, the defensive captain here in Seattle, I'd like to welcome to the show linebacker Steven Johnson of the Seattle Dragons. How are you doing today, Steven?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Well, to start with, I want to ask you a few quick questions, kind of rapid fire, so we can get to know some of your favorite things. Your favorite linebacker of all time?
My favorite linebacker of all time? That's a tough question. I mean, I probably got a couple,
Okay.
The Ray Lewis, Patrick Willis.
Okay.
I used to like guys like Chad Greenway, Luke Kuechly, of course. I love watching him play. Bobby Wagner guys like that. But I guess Ray Lewis would probably top them all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hard to top Ray.
Yeah.
Your favorite thing to do after a hard-fought football game?
Play video games.
Nice.
Get a massage, stretch.
Nice. What's your favorite video game right now?
I play 2K. 2K and Call of Duty are like a close 1 and 2.
Your favorite place so far to eat in Seattle?
That's tough. I've been to this restaurant. I believe it's called Skillet. They got a really good kale Caesar salad with like salmon on it. It's pretty fire.
I'll go for that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, and then your favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie of all time, man. That's tough. That's real tough. I don't know. First one, I'll just say the Fast and the Furious series.
Okay.
I don't know. That's tough. I like a lot of movies.
Okay. Well, we'll get you next time on that one. You've experienced 2 weeks of XFL football now. What are your first big impressions of this brand new football league?
I guess the biggest impression to me is that it feels like NFL football, maybe just a little faster because of the play clock.
Yeah.
But the guys, everybody in this league is got talent. Has been in the NFL before, and it's hard to kind of, pick out the guys who aren't as experienced because everybody is trying to fly around and make plays.
Yeah.
And that's just my take from it.
I'm with you. I think it was super exciting the first 2 weeks. The play on the field is it's only going to get better, but it looks fantastic. And I had a chance to actually be part of the almost 30,000 at CenturyLink for the home opener. What's that like to play behind that kind of energy? Man,
it's amazing. I honestly hope we can top it this week. We need about 35,000 out there.
Yeah.
It was in an atmosphere that, I love it. I'd never necessarily been on the home side, being in Seattle. I've always been away. When I was able to, see all those people in the stands, back in our team, it was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, and that's a big difference too, because as a defender, when you come in from the away team, you're not getting that energy behind you.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that was awesome. What what a phenomenal home opener. From start to finish, it was a great experience. And you yourself have had a strong start the first couple weeks. You've got about 18 total tackles. But what are you working on most right now as a linebacker in your game?
I'm just working on continuing to get to the ball, always working on my movement, getting off blocks and stuff like that. I try to work on, the things that, linebackers do. It's just kind of like a repetition thing to, make sure I'm sharp. I'm always working on getting to the ball, my angles to the ball, and, finishing, tackles and stuff like that, because when you do that, that's how you're successful on game day.
And I know you guys are coming together as a defensive unit. You looked phenomenal on Saturday, but you're also going up against new teams with new chemistry and, new offensive line pretty much every week to start the season out. With that said, what are you guys preparing for as a defense for this Dallas team that's coming in for week 3?
Dallas, they are an air raid type of, offense, and they do a lot of things that put defenses in tough positions. Yeah. But what we're going to have to do as a defense is just kind of adjust and, make them, feel, our presence, by flying around and hitting them and, closing gaps when they need to be closed and dropping into the right zones and stuff like that. So,
absolutely.
And they've got Landry Jones, and I played with him for 2-3 years in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
So I know a lot about him.
Good.
I played against Cameron Artis-Payne.
Nice.
I played against Lance Dunbar, so they got a good team. They got some good weapons, and they do a lot of good things on offense. Yeah. So, we're gonna have to, be on our A game, be able to stop them, because they're a great team. I mean, they were picked to win this whole thing.
Yep.
So,
yep.
I mean, and we were picked last. So.
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with those predictions, but
yep.
I mean, we got a tough one ahead of us.
Well, yeah, and hopefully you're sharing all your notes of those guys with your fellow defensive players too, and we'll get on them. Have you ever played, or are you very familiar with new Seattle Dragon Corey Toomer?
Oh, yeah, I played against him.
Okay.
Haven't played with him. I know a lot about him. He's been a vet in the NFL for a long time. So, yeah, he's had a lot of good experience.
Okay, to close things out, I want you to get into your zone as a vocal leader. Give the Dragons fans some fuel and let them know why we breathe fire in Seattle. What would you like to say to them?
Through this whole, XFL, this new league, they chose us in Seattle to be Dragons. And I kind of, when I became a Dragon, I asked myself, okay, well, what is a Dragon? What does a Dragon do? And you come out here in Seattle, and it rains all the time, and it's cloudy, and then you hear a lot about the Seahawks, right? And I'm like, okay, well, a Dragon, like, that's kind of like a Seahawk that flies over the ocean. Like, it's always raining. It's kind of just lurking, But one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make a Dragon mad, or you don't want to piss a Dragon off. It's going to be a whole bunch of fire, coming out of nowhere.
Nice.
So I think, on our team, kind of the mantra we have taken is, we make everything hot. Whenever we go into, any arena, any atmosphere, we go into that arena already pissed off. Pissed off, number one, because they chose us last. We don't even have a chance to win this thing. And number two, just because there's another opponent over there that is trying to, take food away from your family, or trying to take something with you, or trying to take success from you. So what do we have to do? Let's fly around, and let's make the everybody watching on TV, let's look at these guys fly around and make plays, and then, take that mantra on of being a Dragon and breathing fire. You know what I mean?
I do.
To where, every to my teammates, I say we make it so hot that even the audience wants to leave because it's too hot in the stadium.
It was nice and cozy where I was perched. So that message is being sent already, because the defensive back, the front seven, that defense is breathing some fire right now, and I hope you guys continue that. And I want to thank you for hopping on the show. We'll let you get to your next meeting, and I wish you all the best in XFL 2020.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Our pleasure. Okay, that's Seattle's fire-breathing linebacker. You can follow Steven on Twitter and Instagram at SMJ2852. I want to thank all you listeners for listening to episode 5. I also want to thank the communications and PR department of the Seattle Dragons for linking us up with Steven Johnson. We really appreciate the work that they do, and go Dragons. As a reminder, you can follow XFL Endzone on Twitter and now on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And for those of you living near the Washington coast, we'll be hosting a Dragons watch party in Aberdeen, Washington at Game Day Sports Bar and Grill. It's free admission, there's a free raffle with some really nice prizes, and we'll kick things off around 1 p.m. with kickoff at 2 p.m. So come join some XFL fans and help root on the Seattle Dragons as they fight it out with the St. Louis Battlehawks in Week 4. In fact, a portion of our next episode will be recorded at this fun and free event as we get fans' predictions and reactions throughout the day. Check in with us on social media for more details. And until next time, enjoy Week 3 of XFL 2020. Thank you for listening to Sea of Dragons, XFL Endzone 2020.